on this occasion, the 1st Tenham Scouts. I'm Councillor Mike Baldock and I'll be chairing this evening's meeting. The meeting will be recorded and proceedings will be conducted in accordance with the Council's constitution, including procedural rules which are available on the Council's website. Item 1, emergency evacuation procedure. There is no planned evacuation drill this evening, and I'm surely hoping that there isn't a real one. Accordingly, if the alarm sounds, it is to be treated as a genuine need to evacuate. There are emergency exits. There's one door over there, and there's emergency exits by the lifts where you came in. Please do not use the lifts. On exiting, you will be directed to the assembly point, and it is important that you remain there and do not return to the building until I have announced that it is safe to do so. If anyone present will need assistance in evacuating, could you please inform me now so that we can make the necessary arrangements to assist you? The meeting determines the rights and obligations of the applicant. Members must consider each application and everything that is said in the meeting concerning the application and making their decision based solely on their planning judgment of the information available to them. Following a decision by members, delegated authority is given to the planning officer to issue the decision notice. Planning permission is not granted or refused until the issue of that decision notice. Any member of the council who is not a member of a planning committee may attend as a visiting member and may speak, having given prior notification. Such visiting members may, of course, include ward members, and whilst visiting members can speak on an application, they are not permitted to vote. Any member acting as a substitute on the planning committee must have undertaken appropriate training before doing so. Members must remain in the meeting for the whole time that each item is being debated and should not vote on that item unless they have done so. I would now like to welcome our public speakers and remind you that you have 3 minutes to speak. An audible warning of time will be given when there are 30 seconds remaining. If the meeting is deferred to conduct a site meeting, you may speak both at this meeting and at the site meeting, but there will be no further opportunity to speak on the matter when it comes back to the planning committee. The meeting will follow the order set out in the agenda, dependent on amendments by myself. In particular, I will take items where a member of the public has registered to speak first, before moving on to the remainder of the agenda, and I will verbally reorder the agenda as appropriate. Right, item 2. Apologies for absence and substitute.
Thank you, Chair. Have apologies for absence for Councillor Andy Booth, Councillor James Hall, and Councillor Elliot Jays is running late.
Okay. Item 3, the minutes. To approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 12th of October 2023, minutes numbers 352 to 355 is the correct record. Read. Do I need that? Is she proposed in a second? Excellent. Item 4. To invite members' declarations of disclosable pecuniary interests under the Localism Act of 2011. None. Any disclosable non-pecuniary interests under the Code of Conduct adopted by the Council. None. I'd like to remind the meeting that where it is possible that a fair-minded and informed observer, having considered the facts, would conclude that there is a real possibility that a member might be predetermined or biased on any agenda item, the member should declare this possibility and then leave the room where that item is to be considered. Right, looking around again. Part B, reports for the planning committee to decide. I'm going to start with deferred item 2. Which is 23/501-017/full land west of Barton Hill Drive. I'm going to ask the planning officer to provide a summary and update on the application, please.
Thank you, Chair. As members may recall, this item was deferred from the September Planning Committee in order that 3 items were considered further. The first issue was to look at the design of the building in terms of its scale and design, to find improvements within its landscape setting. The second issue was to look at the swept path drawings to be reviewed by Cambridge County Council in order that service vehicles can enter and leave the site in a forward gear. The third issue was to allow a response to be sought from NHS. Thank you. I'll quickly run through the presentation to start with, and I'll go back to those three key issues. So, as members may recall from the previous discussions in September, this is a site located to the southwest of Minster-on-Sea. This is the location plan showing its context with the roundabout and properties on Barton Hill Drive to the east. This is the previous site layout which you looked at in the meeting in September. Following the discussions, the layout itself has been revised. Greater articulation found within the layout and form of the building. So you got a series of steps within the building to break up the overall mass in its context. In terms of the elevations, these were the previous elevations before you in September. So the north and east elevations, and these were the previous elevations for the south and east. Following discussions, the design has been changed, again, in order to break up the overall mass and form and articulation of the building. So it reads more as a series of, I would describe as townhouse elements in that same form, but broken up to break up the overall mass and scale of the building. And again, this is the further elevations showing that same articulation and breaking up of the overall bulk and form of the building. These are the 3D views facing north from the roundabouts. These are the views facing the southeast. Views of the building with Barton Hill Drive on the left to the left-hand side of the page. And these are the views of the building facing the southwest. So just leaving the overall footprint of the site on the screen. So the revisions have been submitted and reconsulted on, and from an officer perspective, found to meet the request that members put to officers to find a building that is more broken up in terms of its overall scale and form. The second issue related to the matter of the swept paths, and these swept path drawings have been submitted and have been assessed by Cambridge County Council in April of this year and have found to be acceptable. The third issue, Chair, was the matter of the consultation with the NHS for Kent and Medway, in which they responded that at this point in time, as set out in the report, Chair, at this point in time, we will not be requesting a financial contribution against this application, as our internal discussions on any change required to the approach are ongoing. So the position as it stands with NHS that they will not be looking for a financial contribution against this application. The application is therefore before you, Chair, with a recommendation for approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask Councillor Peter MacDonald speaking on behalf of Minster Parish Council?
Good evening, everyone. My parish council hat on at the last minute. I was asked during the afternoon to come today because the councillor who was coming was rather poorly. So basically, we don't agree. We agree with care homes. We're quite happy with care homes, but the site, frankly, is totally unsustainable. The reasons for that were set out in the parish's comments. It's just off the A2500, which is grossly overloaded. The design capacity of a carriageway on a 2-lane road is 13,000 vehicles a day. In actual fact, it's well over 20,000 already. We've got another 2,000 unexpended planning in Minster, and obviously they will be using the same junction. So if I just quickly whiz through, the parish members made the strongest possible objection on the that we actually, or at least the council did before. The care home is situated in the worst possible location. I mean, anyone that knows the area knows that it's congested all the time, and there is huge opposition to it. And there's another 700 dwellings, which aren't shown on there, of course, which is unexpended planning. So it's going to be pretty well surrounded by even more housing. And of course, that's the thing. Parking provision is inadequate. And bear in mind that, I mean, the claim is that there'd be a low vehicle movement, but that with a care home of this size, that's probably going to be untrue, because it requires a 24-hour constant stream of traffic movements entering and exiting the site. These vehicles used by emergency services and maintenance, delivery, food, etc. The parish council considers that the scale is still, though it's been blocked up, is actually still far too great. And there are much better locations where the parish would be quite happy to see further care homes. We've got some on the seafront, and this, quite frankly, is the wrong place. The particulates in the air will be very high, and they won't get any better because of the sheer volume of traffic.
30 seconds.
Yeah, Barton Hill Drive up the side as well is already getting well overloaded. So we think, or at least the parish thinks, that it's quite unsuitable for this area. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Can I ask Joe Kemp, please? Okay, you have 3 minutes. You will have a 30-second warning.
Good evening. My name is Jo Kemp from LNT Care Developments. I'm sure my colleague set out the many benefits of the proposed care home during September's committee meeting, so I will focus instead on the concerns raised and what we've done to overcome them. Firstly, our design team have worked hard to improve the appearance of the home whilst also maintaining the care-specific internal layout. The roof has been broken up, as we've just heard, with some of the roof planes lowered to reduce the overall scale and mass. The revised materials palette provides a more natural appearance, and the introduction of gable features and weatherboard cladding adds interest and articulation to the elevations. more fitting, we feel, for what will be an important community facility and a landmark building in its gateway location. In terms of parking, the home would have 25 parking spaces, which, as residents will not have any cars, will purely be for visitors and staff. Although there will be up to 24 members of staff on site at the busiest part of the day, which is over lunchtime, the shifts are staggered to avoid busy changeovers. Staff generally come from within a 5-mile radius of the site, and residents will either come from or have family within that same radius or catchment. Visitors and staff are therefore more likely to walk, cycle, or use public transport when visiting the home. And as visiting hours are unrestricted, most visitors tend to arrive in the evenings when there are less staff on shift, so more parking spaces available. As well as being the UK's leading residential care home developer, I think we've now built over 220 care homes nationwide. We, L&T, also operate many of them via our sister company, so have decades of experience on the operational and care provision side. It's therefore very much in our interests to provide the correct level of parking and also to ensure that the location of the home is suitable. Many residents are unable to leave the home unaccompanied due to their age or health, so the home will include many amenities such as a cinema, cafe and hair salon. We know from our operational experience that residents like to feel connected to the outside world. It's actually a common misconception that care homes should be quiet and still. Residents, we always find, prefer to see and hear activity and movement, and also know what's going on around them.
30 seconds.
Thank you. Being able to look out over the roundabout and longer distance views beyond makes this an ideal location for a sustainable, economy and employment boosting community facility to provide the older people of Minster-on-Sea and the surrounding area with not only a new home, but also a greater quality of life. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'll move the officer's recommendation. Seconded, Councillor Hunt. Anybody wish to speak on this? Oh, Councillor White, I believe you have your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, I think you probably meant Councillor Worcester, but that's okay. I did want to speak on this. I know that Sheerness is a ward that is next door to this ward, so I think it's prevalent because obviously there was a misconception in what the developer actually said, was that this was going to be a community asset. This is actually taking away from the community rather than giving to the community. Today, KCC have just decided to close the island's last supported care home on the island, which nobody is happy about. And if this development decides to go ahead, we will actually be replacing that with something that will cost people who are lucky enough to get a space there potentially hundreds and hundreds of pounds just to be there. So it's not really fit for the majority of residents that actually need that help on Sheppey, and it really shouldn't be couched in that way. It needs to be actually dressed in reality, which is this is a inappropriate development next to a very busy road, and actually I still like to see the evidence where people who are going to work there are going to come within 5 minutes and walk, because actually generally care people on the island have to drive long distances to get to work. They're not paid particularly well, and actually we want to see a much better response from KCC, who have the welfare of our residents, or should have the welfare of our residents, rather than it being left to private concerns where it's a lot more difficult to actually monitor how our residents are kept. I'm sure this company have a sparkling record, but at the same time, we as an island need to see KCC step up with our social care and our care for our residents rather than private concerns. Thank you very much for your time, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Worcester. Councillor Winkles.
Thank you, Chair. I'm quite pleased that the developers have gone away and listened to our concerns that we brought up in September with the initial design. I won't say I'm totally 100% impressed with the redesign, but it is an improvement. Picking up on a point I think the parish councillor said tonight, it's 66 rooms. Well, I think 66 people or rooms, but people are in care won't really be driving. I would have thought not many of them. So really, do have some reservations about the location. But yet again, as I've said before, in recent times, if we was to turn this down as a committee and it went to appeal, I'm sure we would lose because it's already earmarked for development, as I understand, of housing if necessary. So if this gets turned down, then there'll be housing for that, which will then create more traffic movements. So I'm inclined to go with the opposite recommendation on this, but I'll listen to the rest of the debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Winkler. Councillor Hunt.
Thanks, Chair. I'm pleased with what's come back. I think it could be better. I think we'd really like to see something that's really outstanding and something on that corner. But we haven't got the policies to back that up and really push for it anymore. And we can only do what we can do with what we've got. And I think thanks to the officers and the developer that have gone and come back with something different. They could have come back and have said, no, we're not changing anything, and we probably still have to accept it. But they have come back and made the changes, and I think it is looking a lot better for that location. And as says in the report, that have gone away and considered about the housing that's already there and using material that does match in and complements that. So I think from what this committee discussed last time was over the design. The mass was a concern, but it looks the mass is still there, and you're not. As I said last time, you're not going to get away from that. It is what it is with the size, but it does make it better without just having big square blocks there. I think the other matters are well covered in there, and I think it's a good thing to be having a nursing home. It's not just a residential home; it is an actual nursing care home, and that is desperately needed. With KCC closing places, okay, KCC probably do need to go off and do something, but this is good that it's come in and we're not just ending up with more housing on this site, which we could end up with. So this is a much better use, and I'm pleased to see it looking like it is now.
Councillor Marchington.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just like to make a few comments. He can one say it's a very large building, but of course you need to get the right care for the older people. You need a large and to have the right facilities available to those that they need. It's quite similar to in size to the British Legion.
Can we see what noise background noise?
Sorry.
Okay, carry on, Councillor Marchington.
Okay, sorry. It's very similar in size to the one the British Legion at Aylesford. That's large. My mother was there for 5 years, and I never ever found that to be busy at any time when I went to go to dinner. It was never really what you call busy. They had about 30 car parking spaces that was there. It was very close to between the A20 and the M20, so it was right next to the motorways. It was the perfect place to get to for people travelling to see them at that stage. So I've seen this close to a road junction with links to everywhere in the island. I see as a good point rather than being tucked away at Minster Village, you know. Down in Rushden, we used to have a care home down there. It was closed down because they had to share bathrooms, so we lost it. And one thing we became very, very aware of then, you need your old close. You need them where the families can visit them. So if you've got all these house buildings throughout the whole of Minster Business, you need a care home in your area that can handle it. And therefore, I don't see anything wrong with it. I think it's quite good. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marchington. Councillor Henderson.
I think the committee has done a good job in improving this development. It really wasn't terribly good the first time it came to it. But let's understand where we are on it. If we try to turn it down on the basis of road use or the wrong type of care home or any other general ideas, we will simply lose an appeal, probably with cost. And therefore, I think we've got as much of an improvement as we are likely to get. And I think we should agree to it as it is now put. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Henson. No other speakers. I'll put this to the vote. You have to be here for the whole debate.
Last moment move, Chair.
Okay, he's going to clarify that one for me. All the planning officers, oh, no. It's Billy, it's going to be you. Oh, did you miss a speaker?
I did. I heard them remotely, but if that's whatever the decision is, the decision.
No, yeah, if you've missed the speaker, then that's, yeah, you can't vote. So, those in favour of the officer recommendation, please show. Oh, something. Those against? Well, that's it. It's cast unanimously. Yep, and one abstention from Councillor Jays, who wasn't here for the whole meeting, so couldn't vote. We'll take a short break. Okay, then we'll move on to deferred item 1, which is 23/500-263/Rem land at Wises Lane, Borden. Can the planning officer provide a summary and update on the application, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, everyone. You may recall, the committee may recall that this came before the planning committee in August, and it was deferred for a number of reasons, which are set out in the deferred report, and minuted under paragraph 1.2 of the report. The issues that arose was design, external lighting, number of toilets, and comments were made about no community engagement. So consequently, the applicant has met with Borden Parish Council, and the design has been amended. But just to refresh everyone's memory, I will just run through exactly where the site is. This is the site boundary. Aerial views showing Wisers Lane in the foreground, Wisers Oast Business Centre, and the background here is the Borden Nature Reserve. Wisers Lane wraps around to Cryles Lane in this area here that leads up to Borden Lane further along. This is the view from above Borden Nature Reserve, looking towards the rest of the development site for Wisers Lane, which is predominantly residential. And in the context of the overall appeal approval for this development, this is where the principle of the rugby pitches and the community hub dual use has already been agreed in principle. So what we're looking at is reserve matters. This is the amended layout that incorporates additional car parking, and you can see that the main access to the facility, this is where the building sits, with the 2-foot full-size rugby pitches to the east, sitting behind the business centre, and the cottages which front onto Wisers Lane. Now, the amendments to the design are essentially to try and mimic what one could arguably call a barn type of arrangement from Wisers Lane itself, where the building would back onto that particular viewpoint. The bricks have been toned down. As a comparison, I can show you what came before the committee in August. Just bear with me a second. So this was the original design. So the mass and scale of the building essentially remains the same, but they're using a lighter buff colored brick tone, and instead of standing seam metal cladding, they are now using a mimicry timber cladding, and the details of the materials are set out within the report. The standings under paragraph 4.13. So essentially, what you see on the main presentation slide, going back to it, that's essentially the difference between the two. Now, the applicant has engaged with Borden Parish Council, as I said earlier, and there are no objections to the redesign of the scheme. Insofar as the toilets are concerned, there is a total of 13 WCs available within the facility that could be used. Most of them are outside of the changing facilities. There are 2 WCs, including a disabled loo on the first floor, where the main community facility floor space is provided. So around the stair core, there is access available to the WCs on the ground floor. In terms of the main access, there was concern expressed about whether there would be sufficient width for vehicles, particularly coaches, to access the site. And the Tri-King diagram here shows how a coach can enter the site and turn around within the site and leave in forward gear. At the moment, the width of Cryles Lane will be widened to 5.5 metres as part of the proposal. There are disabled parking spaces. The total parking provision will increase from 65 to 74. Now, it was the council's parking SPD tested on the original scheme, which indicated that it was compliant, and the requirement was for 32 spaces. So the original scheme had 65. It's now gone up to 76. This is the landscape master plan, which shows quite a dense landscaping arrangement, including planting of up to 111 trees, hedgerows all the way around the site to enclose it with a thickness of about 5 meters. This was covered in the original report, and if I can go back to the overall layout, it shows as an imagery how the landscaping will contain the site. Borden Parish Council did seek, as I mentioned earlier in the tabled update, they sought clarity on a number of points. We have gone back to KCC Ecology to check these, including the light spill. And essentially, we are recommending that condition 2 be tweaked to include tinted glass to the buildings to mitigate against potential light spill. Notwithstanding, there is a condition that requires a lighting strategy to be submitted for further approval, and that will be subject to the Environmental Health Officer's scrutiny, as well as KCC Ecology. The external lighting being primarily to the car parking area for security. There is also a management plan required, amongst other things, to moderate the hours of operation. Notwithstanding that, there is also a community use agreement secured under the Section 106 that was completed as part of the original hybrid permission, which was discussed at the committee in August. So all in all, there are several layers of safeguarding conditions and Section 106 provision, which we feel will provide sufficient safeguards against the concerns that have been expressed to date. One of the things that I will draw attention to is that in terms of the lighting, the applicant has informed us, or rather the Sittingbourne Rugby Club, who will take occupation of the site, that under paragraph 4.45 of the report makes it clear that most of their operations are during daylight hours, and that's adjusted over the winter period as well. So in conclusion, Chairman, officers consider that there is sufficient safeguarding provisions, and the design has been enhanced, if I can put it that way, which seems to now satisfy Borden Parish's concerns. So on that basis, the recommendation still stands with the additional conditions that KCC Highways have requested, and they are included and listed as conditions 4 and 5. So subject to the conditions listed in the report, the recommendation is to approve. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Simon. Can you just clarify, one of the issues that was mentioned at the last meeting was the apparent requirement to widen the whole of Cryles Lane. Can you clarify that that isn't actually a condition or a requirement of this planning application?
It's not subject to this application. As I referred, you may recall that in terms of the overall Wisers Lane development, there seems to be some indication that Cryles Lane eventually may be widened, but as far as this application is concerned, it's confined to the access point, which will be widened. Now, what happens later on is subject to further consultations and submissions under the reserved matters for those relevant phases, which are 3 and 4 of the scheme. As I understand it, there is currently pre-application engagement by Barrett's and David Wilson Homes with KCC Highways to establish the details of the Eastern Link Road that will connect to Borden Lane at this end. So, in short, there's no certainty at this time, but it's most likely that Cryles Lane will be widened eventually to accommodate the new housing development that will be sitting around it. I hope that clarifies, Chair.
Yep, thank you. Well, you have got a tabled update. I know some of you might not have had time to read it yet. So as with item 3.1, I'll give you 5 minutes to read the tabled update. Okay, if everybody's done, I'll call the first speaker, who is Roger Down, please. That's 3 minutes. Our beeper seems to be going off at a minute, but I will tell you when you have 30 seconds.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. I'm now, last time I spoke, I was chairman of Sittingbourne Rugby Club. I'm now the president. So I've got a mightily high title now. Sittingbourne Rugby Union Football Club was established in '76 and has been based at Gore Court for the last 17 years. Prior to our move to Gore Court, we had a number of temporary arrangements, playing on council pitches and using public houses for post-match socialising. Over the years, we've made numerous attempts to find ourselves a permanent home, with approaches to a number of schools and sports associations, all of which have been unsuccessful. The club is currently located at Gore Court, where it shares sporting and social clubhouse facilities with both hockey and cricket clubs, which is far from ideal, as the facilities are not able to accommodate the size of our junior section. In fact, the Gore Court Committee have stated on a number of occasions that as a result of our success, the club has grown too large to be accommodated fully at Gore Court. The rugby club has no security of tenure at Gore Court. We have aspirations to find an alternative, permanent home to enable the club to meet its current needs and invest in its future growth. For these reasons, the approved development at Wises Lane provides opportunity for the club to relocate nearby its existing base, where these aspirations can be realised and our community involvement can be retained and enhanced. The delivery of these exemplar sporting and community facilities as part of the approved mixed-use development will provide security of tenure, as the site promoter has offered a 125-year lease, which is extendable, and enable the club to obtain funding from the RFU, Sport England, public sector, and environmental grant assistance. The RFU and Sport England funding is not currently available to the club. One of our greatest concerns is that of access to all. Gore Court has no facilities for access to or use by physically disadvantaged people, meaning that a number of our members and their family members are unable to join with us in either rugby or social activities.
30 seconds.
Supported by a community use agreement, this development would enable us to welcome all people to use the club. We take great pride in our members' commitment to supporting people who have additional needs and a range of other charities. This development would give us the wherewithal to attract more playing and social members to support that activity. Since the last committee, we've met with and worked closely with the Parish Council to overcome their concerns and those raised by the committee. We are pleased to see they no longer object to the application. I look forward to working with you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And now can I ask Gaynor Aspin? It's the big red, the bottom of the big red sticker. I'm still on, so as soon as you're ready. You should have copies of the speech if you wish to follow it through. You'll get there's a beep at a minute and I'll give you 30 seconds warning. So start when you're ready.
Good evening. At the last planning meeting, I stressed the importance of ensuring that the requirements surrounding this application are made to work for the whole community, not just the rugby club. It's disappointing that we are still some way from ensuring this goal is achieved. This report to the planning committee is confusing, with several contradictions, errors and omissions, yet again raising more questions than answers. We therefore recommend a further deferral to be brought back to this committee. Sections 4.7 and 4.9 of the planning report are conflicting in that the former states there should be no detrimental impact on Borden Nature Reserve, while the latter states that mitigation will have to be put in place to offset the impact. So there must be an impact if mitigation is required. Landscaping will not mitigate noise nor the lighting impact. An expert impact assessment should have been done before this planning meeting, as this is a material planning matter. So why has it not been done? How can the parish council state and bizarrely ask the applicant to accept that the planning department is confident the Borden Nature Reserve will not be impacted by the noise and lighting from the rugby club? What is the evidence for this? Until an expert has properly assessed the ecological impact of the increased noise and lighting, especially after dusk, and the increased footfall, nobody will know the extent of the inevitable impact. For inevitable it is. This also conflicts with the statement in 4.6 of the report. The lighting strategy would be subject to the advice of the lighting engineers and assessed by the Council's Environmental Health Service. How can the planning department be confident there will be no impact when the lighting strategy has not yet been done? It's further contradicted by the Environmental Health Service's own statement that it is not part of their remit to look into the impact of external lighting on the nature reserve. So whose remit is it? We must stop undermining how important the nature reserve is for the local community and for the protected species and the wildlife that live there. Borden Wildlife Group is willing to commission an ecological impact assessment on the nature reserve, and this should be allowed to happen before any decision is made on this application. The applicant has omitted to stipulate the days and times of rugby training. So will they be training in the dark? Why is important information missing? No floodlighting is a condition of the outline planning approval. Yet at the 17th of August planning meeting, our planning officer stated that floodlighting could be revisited at a later date. This is again conflicting, confusing, and will lead to a serious challenge by both residents and users of the nature reserve if the council do not abide by the no floodlighting condition. So the question remains, how will the rugby players train in the evening in winter? The applicant has made a late change to include one coach parking space. How will it turn around given the narrow entrance and no space to turn? Reversing onto the road is dangerous. Where will the road be widened? The calculations for parking have been based only on the rugby club usage. The requirements of the community have a missing. This is a major development. Key information is still missing, inaccurate or unclear. We urge this committee to defer their decision until these contradictions and omissions are addressed and an impact survey on our nature reserve is completed. Thank you for the time. Apologies for the speed. It's the only way I could do it.
Thank you, Gaynor. Okay, I'll just state for the record here, I am a member of Borden Parish Council, but I did not take any part in the discussions with the applicants. I am disappointed, but it was the applicants following the last planning committee when we made it clear that as a council we should have consulted with the local parish council, but it was the applicants who got in touch, not this borough council. I think that's a sad indictment and not what we asked, but fortunately the developers did get in touch, so there was able to be progress. A couple of questions I just wanted to clarify before we, I better move the debate. I'll move the officer's recommendation, secondary councillor Hunt. Okay, just a couple of things that I wanted to pick up from what's been said. What is EHO say they're not there to consider the impact of lighting onto the nature reserve. So the question is, who actually considers the impact on the nature reserve if the EHO don't consider it within their remit? And can we just have some clarity about what the planning position is regarding lights for the car park? Does that have to be subject to a separate application, or is that covered within this current application?
Sure, Simon's there, Chair, but
yeah, no, I am here. I can answer that, William, if I may.
Okay.
Thank you, Chairman. The external lighting strategy is really to look at the car parking areas. And what we've done is to look at the potential light spill from the building, bearing in mind that the building will be 161 metres from the edge of the Borden Nature Reserve. And I have spoken to KCC Ecology about this, based on the latest clarification points that were raised by Borden Parish Council, which I did mention previously and summarised in the update paper. And they are confident that there should not be any detrimental impact. Not to say that there won't be any impact whatsoever. That's impossible with any development. There will be a degree of impact, but clearly we are in a position where the outline permission has been granted for the facility. We have done all that is possible to secure and safeguard any undue impact, not just on the nature reserve, but on surrounding residential properties as well. So as things stand, we are confident that with the conditions, notwithstanding the community use agreement, which is another layer that I'd mentioned earlier, that should mitigate the undue impact or harm that is projected. Thank you, Chair.
And can you confirm that the tinted windows are part of the existing conditions, or do we have to move that tonight?
I put it in the update paper, Chairman, just to add the tinted windows, which is advised by the ecologists to make sure that there is no light spill in the direction of the BNR, notwithstanding the distances involved. So you will see. Thank you.
But are we okay to change that condition to include the tinted windows? Great. Okay. First speaker I've got is Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair. Looking at the highways issues for a start, I understand that, and I believe I'm correct in saying this, the Cryles Lane bit is only being widened from Wises Lane to the entrance to the site. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you for clarity, Chair. Having looked at this again and the photo, well, the drawing that the officer put up on there of the car parking and bus turning facilities, again, I have to question the access from the A2 through Wises Lane and all the houses there, with the with respect to 52, 53 seater buses and more. I still feel that even with the widening to 5.5 metres, I believe, it's still going to be quite tight turning in and out of the actual site from Cryles Lane. And then when you get in there, you look at, and I don't know if the officer can put back up the view of the car park with the diagram with the just the car parking on its own.
Do you have that? Thank you, Simon.
Yeah, when you look at that, yes, it's ideal for coming. Well, not ideal, but it's okay for coming in forward gear with 53 seater coaches. But when you get to the turning head, if all those car parking spaces on either side and at the end are full, and those ones in the middle, there is absolutely no possibility whatsoever that even the best driver would be able to get a coach round there. There's just simply not the lock on the coaches to be able to turn that. And when you do try and turn in that turning circle, the back end of the bus would kick out and it would smash all the fronts of the vehicles or rears of the vehicles, whichever way they've gone in those parking spaces to the right of the road. So I don't see that problem has been addressed, and we've got only one parking space for a coach anyway. So if there's 3 or 4 coaches there, it's going to block the place up completely. And my other concern is that when the matches are over, not everyone is going to come out of that site and turn left and go back towards Wises Lane. I can see the problem there where people are going to turn right and try and go down Cryles Lane and then join on to Brisbane Avenue and Adelaide Drive, taking traffic then onto Adelaide Drive and possibility with Baldwin Lane and trying to get out onto the A2. So those are my highways concerns. However, similar to what Councillor Winkler said earlier, well, I think we are in a position now that if we were to turn this down, we could be in quite a lot of trouble with an appeal. However, in saying that, I don't know if it's possible to put in, judging by what we went through the training earlier on, to put in a condition that there is a condition put on for a no right turn from the site into Cryles Lane to try and mitigate what I've just said. Thank you, Chairman.
In the long run, Cryles Lane is going to be cut off just after the nature reserve, and you won't be able to access it any further.
Sorry, Chairman. In the meantime, if that is a possibility, because the further phases, I think they were termed phases 4 and 5, they may not come forward for some years.
Can we put a condition that no right turn out of the premises?
That's probably going to be a challenging condition to impose, because in terms of the roads and how they operate is covered by the Highways Act rather than planning legislation. And we need to bear in mind what we're considering this evening. And this evening we are considering a reserved matters application whereby access has already been determined at outline stage. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Hunt.
Chair, I wasn't at the August meeting when this was discussed, but obviously I'd seen the report and looked at the last report from that meeting, and I think it just shows again, like that last application we discussed, that it's good that this committee can get these changes and send it back, and there has been discussions for something to come back better. Obviously, everything that has been asked for, the Borden Parish Council, it's good that there has been those discussions. It's probably a shame that those discussions didn't happen in the first place. I mean, a lot of these discussions take place, as you can see, the developers sort of happily accept, well, maybe not happily, but has accepted everything that the Parish Council was asked for, has made the changes to make it better. And that just shows, I think, what we can do as a committee sometimes to get things better. I think having this come forward is a good thing. It is a good community asset. We hear so many times that developers aren't going to deliver on them, and here we are having something that's been promised, hopefully being delivered. It's going to be a good use of the site. Again, like I've said before, it's not just housing that we're getting on here. We're getting this asset that is needed. With the concerns around there, I know it's good to see that we've got the hedgerows around the edges, 5 metres. There's quite a lot of planting going into this. And again, that's increasing biodiversity on the site. We haven't just got a ploughed field now. There's going to be some planting in there, and that's going to be helping. I've got a few questions around the access, because I think we are difficult to argue anything on highways, because KCC Highways have accepted it, and obviously we've got the tracking of how that coach is going to move around the site, and it shows that it's okay. So I can't think we can make any argument, but just something that was said about the widening, we just get clarification on that, because what was said in the beginning by the officer is that it be widened not as part of this, but as part of the rest of the development. So is that widening going to be happening before this site is used? Because if we're saying that, okay, it's okay for coaches to move around the site, but that widening won't happen before this is built out and being used, I think it needs a bit more of a tie-in than that, if that's the case.
Simon, can you confirm that the widening of the road of Cryles Lane from Wises Lane to the entrance will be done before the occupation of the site?
Well, that's part of the requirement and proposal inherent in the scheme to facilitate the use of the site for the rugby club facility. Now, there are additional phases to be implemented, over the next few years. And as it stands at the moment, specifically on the merits of this particular case, KCC Highways accept the proposal in highway terms, parking terms. They have looked at the coach turning facilities as well, and they're satisfied with it. So I can't look at a crystal ball and say it's going to happen next year or the year after, but certainly they do need to provide the access arrangements as proposed before the facility comes into use.
Sorry, I think there's a bit of confusion here. Okay, so does that mean that Quiles Lane itself has to be widened from Wises Lane to the entrance of the community hub before it can be used? Or are you saying that the building can go ahead and that the widening of the road will happen possibly at a future date as part of a future submission?
Not at all, Chairman. It's my understanding that and I think this came up at the last meeting as well, that they do need to widen Quiles Lane in order to facilitate the traffic movement in and out of the site, including a coach. So they will need to widen Quiles Lane up to the entrance point, which is proposed and shown on the access plans. As you can see here, it will be widened in order to facilitate those traffic movements, as I just mentioned.
Councillor Hunt.
Thank you. So I think I have got better understanding. It does need to be done before this takes place, but there's nothing in writing or anything anywhere to say that it has to be done. And I think that is something that is going to be needed, whether that is an extra condition to ensure that those works are done. I assume it's probably under a Section 278 agreement, that is done prior to this occupation of the site, because you can't have a plan showing that a coach can come in and move around the site if the coach can't get to the site. And if that's all been based on that widening taking place, then we need to make sure that is included. And just with the right no right turn, I know KCC can't do that, but I think it could be a thing if this, and officers tell me if I'm wrong, but if the committee did want to go down that route, we could be asking for a TRO to be put into the Section 106 agreement. So it goes through the procedure it's paid for by the developer, and then KCC would then look at whether that could be done or not.
So can we add a condition requiring the completion of the road widening before any occupation? And secondly, can we put a condition in requiring a TRO to implement an overright turn? Section 106.
In terms of the condition relating to the widening of the road, we can impose a condition to require the road to be widened and agree a suitable trigger prior to first use. Would probably be the most suitable condition and trigger, I suggest. In terms of the no right to turn in the Section 106 agreements, again, I think we need to come back to the type of application that we're considering this evening. We have a reserved matters application whereby we're considering scale, appearance, landscaping and layout. The Section 106 agreement has already been secured at outline stage.
So do you wish to propose that condition?
Yes.
Okay, I'll second it. Are we happy with that condition being? Yep. Okay. Councillor Winklis.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, a lot of what I was concerned about has been covered, so I won't go over it again. But one thing I will ask for, I think I asked at the August meeting, can we have a picture of the width of Quiles Lane as it is, please, and know exactly what part of the road is going to be widened? Is that possible?
Simon, have you been out with your camera?
Just bear with me, Chairman.
Well, you can call up Google Earth, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I've been flying the drone over the site, so I don't know whether we can get a a clearer picture of the drone shot that shows Cryles Lane as it is, and I have been down there, so I do appreciate that it's quite a narrow country lane. And I certainly agree with Kerry that we, if that is the wish of the committee, that we could impose effectively a Grampian condition for them to widen the road up to the access point. But sorry, Chair, I'm out of ground level shots at the moment. But if you want me to try and access it via Google Street View, I'll try and do that as quickly as I possibly can. So if you will just bear with me.
Okay, I will go to the next speaker and then come back to Councillor Winkler's point. Councillor
Mr. Chairman, it's quite clear KCC ain't going to pay to widen Cryles Lane, and therefore it's the developer that's going to pay, and therefore we can, I think as Kerry has really confirmed, we can put a condition that the developer must widen the road before the car park is put into use.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Henderson. Councillor Lewin, I think you have accessed Cryles Lane. That's Councillor Winkler.
Thank you. So basically, the question I'm asking, I'm not a mathematician. There have been 5.5 metres. How far down Cryles Lane this proposed widening is going down past the access?
Just to the access at the moment.
Just to the access. So we've got a very narrow lane there that goes down quite a considerable distance, which Simon Clark touched on. I had some grave concerns. If we're having coaches coming along there on it, etc., etc., I don't know how the heck vehicles are going to be able to pass one. And it is a concern to me. And if we was to pass it, we're going to cause absolute congestion along there. That's my point. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Winkler. Simon, could you put up the diagram of the car parking? Because I am concerned about this car park lighting. Are we able to condition that all the lighting must point away from the nature reserve? So you can light the car park up, but it wouldn't be in the direction of the nature reserve?
Yes, Chairman. The condition 7 does require that they can't install any external lighting until a proper assessment has been made by lighting engineers, and that includes lux levels as well. So they can be cowered away just to light the parking spaces rather than directed towards the Borden Nature Reserve. So that will be subject to further scrutiny, not just consideration by the environmental health officer, but also by the ecologists.
Okay, Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, I wasn't here at the first version of this, so it's the first time I've seen it, but it appears that we're trying to fit a size 8 and a size 9 or whatever way around it is. But I'm concerned about, which was brought up, that there hasn't been a report, and then also bearing in mind Canterbury had the same issue years ago, and then lighting did get fitted. The spotlights will get fitted there, and it will have a massive impact on the nature reserve, without a doubt. So, and also I agree with Councillor Winkler's, the access is tiny. There's quite a good space of land between Bobbing Veterinary Surgery and the main road. You've already got lighting all the way along the main road, so it's not going to be an issue. There's no nature reserve. Obviously, I understand it's a different proposal, but I just can't see how we can protect the nature reserve, really.
I'm still unsure why we're not going in through Wise's Lane. It would be A lot easier. But okay, if there's no further speakers, those in favour of the recommendation, please show. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Those against? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Any abstentions? Okay, so that is carried. Thank you.
Can I just check, Chairman, that was with the additional conditions?
Yes,
the Grampian
with
condition.
the additional conditions and the condition about tinted lighting and the condition
Tinted glass.
for wide load widening. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that.
Okay, the next item is item 2.1, 23/502/301/full 172 Scarborough Drive, Minster. Can I ask the officer for an update, please? Megan?
Thank you, Chairman. There's no update on this case, but I will provide a brief summary of the proposal. So the application site's off Scarborough Drive and proposes the demolition of the bungalow at the site and the erection of 2 detached dwellings in its place. So as you can see from the site location plan, it's a fair distance from Scarborough Drive itself, accessed through a gap in 2 properties. The applicant also owns the majority of the site to the south, where the council granted permission in 2020 for the erection of 4 detached dwellings. That development has commenced and 2 properties have been built, one of which has been sold, which is where you can see this rectangular piece of land that's outside of the blue line. So you can see here an aerial image of the site, which shows the bungalow set roughly halfway down the sort of plot itself. It's surrounded on all 3 sides by residential dwellings, with Minster Cliffs to the north. So here we have an existing block plan. So the bungalows on the left-hand side of the screen, the 4 plots that 2 of which have been constructed are to the side of that, and then Scarborough Drive lies to the right-hand side of the screen. And then there's a shared access road that runs through the site, providing access to all those dwellings. So here's the existing elevations of the bungalow and the floor plans as well. So moving on to the proposed development, as mentioned previously, the bungalow is to be demolished and 2 detached properties located roughly in a similar position to the bungalow within the site. They are slightly staggered in order to create this turning area and parking to the front. Each property will benefit from a double garage or double carport and will share the existing access road with the other 4 properties leading on Scarborough Drive. So here's the proposed elevations for the property. So there'll be 2-storey, also providing rooms within the roof space. The application was amended during the determination process. Initially, dormers were proposed on the front and rear roof slopes, and these have been replaced with roof lights in order to try and address concerns raised by both the planning department, the parish council, and some neighbours about the bulk of the development. So the use of roof lights has minimised the bulk to some degree. There's the side elevations of the property and the floor plans. So open sort of living space on the ground floor, 4 bedrooms on the first floor, and 2 bedrooms within the loft space. So 6 bedrooms in total for each property. And they'll be of the same design, so mirror images sort of thing of themselves. And I think important to note on this one, the existing bungalow, obviously single story at the moment, but in 2021 an application was permitted to add a first floor, and these are the approved plans here. So effectively turned it into a 2-storey property, and what's proposed now is marginally taller in height than this approved scheme, but there is still time for the applicant to implement this. So I think it forms an important fallback that should be taken into account when determining the scheme. Moving on just quickly to some site photos. So this is stood in the access looking towards the bungalow, and the one on the right hand side stood further towards Scarborough Drive. You can see the two new dwellings and then the bungalow in the background. Some photos looking towards Kings Road, so looking eastwards, looking west towards the properties on Westcliff Drive. Some photos taken from the rear, looking towards the boundaries. And then I also walked, there's some footpaths that sort of zigzag the cliffs to the north. And there are some views from the closest footpath, there are some views of the development at the moment. But when you get down to the beachfront itself, because of the changing land levels and the setback of the development within the site, views are very limited. And obviously the development will take it taller than what's currently there, but bearing in mind the fallback, which is of similar scale, it's not concluded that there will be any visual harm. The gaps to neighbouring properties are all in excess of what we'd typically expect. And therefore the officer recommendation is to approve. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. It's amazing what bungalows can become. Councillor MacDonald. Speaking on behalf of Minster Parish Council.
There's always objecting to things, but in fact, we have a huge number of applications and most of them are approved. It's only when we feel things are not quite right that we, or at least the parish, objects. The main problem with the site, where if you're looking, like we've just seen on the pictures, if you're looking down towards the buildings, we don't see a problem there. But in actual fact, what the proposals are, I mean, they claim to be a 2-storey with rooms in the roof, but to my mind, that's 3 stories. The problem is, if you're looking the other way from the officer just said that there weren't any views. Well, the land drops away there towards the sea and the beach. And looking the other way, they will actually be very dominant. So our own parish objects to the height and mass. We don't mind bungalows, and we probably wouldn't, well, we wouldn't be able to object to a 2-storey, but this isn't a 2-storey, it's 3 stories. It's just been massaged. So we think that it's detrimental from the seaward side, not from the other way, that's not a problem. But from the seaward side, it will actually tower. So we consider this to be, and majority of the cliff area there are actually bungalows. So they will actually stick out. So from that area. So we're asking for it to be rejected and perhaps they go back to the drawing board. We'd like a couple of bungalows, but obviously the developer's got other ideas. You know, 6-bedroom houses, it's not really the location for those. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Can I ask Mr. Collins, Mr. John Collins? You get 3 minutes, but I'll tell you when you have 30 seconds left.
Thank you, Chairman, councillors, for the opportunity to speak on this application. As the officer report states, this really is a very large plot within your identified confines and very much a location where the capacity of the site and respective unit numbers should be supported. The council have already approved a scheme, as explained by the officer, that extends the existing bungalow and makes it into a 2-storey dwelling. The height of that is, as the officer said,
practically the same as what's now proposed. The difference in height is negligible. The parish assert that the units are of such a mass that they will represent an over-intensive development and be out of character with the area, and have now commented about views from the cliffs footpath down on the seashore effectively. Just dealing with that one first, I also walked that path, and yes, you would just about see the tops of the roofs, but that would be the case with the extant permission for the bungalow. There's no real difference. And in any event, I don't see how or why that is necessarily harmful, because as you walk along the seafront, you can see properties in Scarborough Drive. It's no different. This proposal remains very much at the lower end of density locally. It's about half an acre, so it's 4 dwellings to the acre. At the most, locally, I would say it's around 8 per acre with the detached properties, and obviously, as you'll appreciate, much more than that elsewhere. Scarborough Drive, there really is an eclectic mix of units, and the scheme picks up on some of the features of other properties locally. There really isn't anything design-wise that can be considered objectionable, in my view, on this scheme. As to separation from neighbours, the distances exceed what you would normally consider acceptable by some amount. There's more than adequate parking, and the 2 units will sit very nicely within the plot. So, Chairman, it is just one additional unit. The impacts are very similar to the extant permission. I would ask members committee to please support the application in this case. Many thanks.
Thank you. I'll move the officer's recommendation.
I'll second.
Thank you, Councillor Winkcliffe. Getting a bit worried then. Okay, I'll open this up for debate. Okay, but first I'll ask Councillor Worcester to speak.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry.
Councillor Worcester, Tony.
Thank you, Chair. I wasn't particularly going to comment on that, but obviously the promenade that is being discussed here is from what I read on the parish council, is what they were actually talking about, which was views that are part of the entire Sheppey residence heritage, if that makes sense. So obviously residents are fiercely proud of the Leas, and they're fiercely proud of the beach, and obviously want to keep it. And I just had to correct, obviously, the person who just spoke, there were some inaccuracies. Obviously, there are no properties that you can view from the beach at all that sit on Scarborough Drive. So that is inaccurate. What you're talking about there is probably properties that are viewed from Westcliff Drive or Kings Road, or any of the roads that do actually make an appearance towards the cliff edge. And it is very prominent when a house decides to put a second story on there, and it's not the area for it. So I'm not coming down on either side, but I just wanted to correct those inaccuracies as a local person myself, and I think I would support the parish council from Sheerness's point of view, because that is a facility that is an island facility, public space, and it would be nice to retain the character of that area as far as we can, if that makes sense. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We out of mouth, Councillor Winkcliffe.
Thank you. My hearing's not quite so good these days, but my apologies for that. Actual fact, I'm totally in favour of this one. 2 or 3 months ago, I was in that area quite a bit, actually. And I actually made a point of looking at the existing property, 172, to give you an idea what we were going to be talking about at the August meeting. And there's quite a variation of different designs of properties down that road, and some very large properties down there, which actually have been passed in the past. Yet again, I will say, if we was to turn this down, in my opinion, we would lose this again. So I would be going for this application, recommending for acceptance. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Winkler. I will remind you that the cost of appeals and the likelihood of losing is not supposed to be a determining factor in your vote. Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, no, it just seems that the permission that was given before seems like a bit of a leverage to overdevelopment to me. And the fact that it was a bungalow, we were just talking earlier about Isle of Sheppey losing elderly and accessible provision. I think we should have some more bungalows within that area that are affordable rather than luxury homes. And developers shouldn't just look at what returns them the most money, but a moral responsibility to what they could offer on a site. That's just all I'd like to say, really.
If only moral responsibility was a material planning matter, it would be great. Okay, Councillor Hunt.
Yeah, I actually think it's a good use for the site. It's when we look at applications and what it's going to look, what property is going to look like on the street scene. I think with the bungalow there, with the new properties that are being built, these new proposals will actually be in keeping more so with what's being built than the bungalow will, which is a shame because we do need more bungalows, and it is a shame to see one going. But I think it is a good use of the site. It is a large site on that area, and I think the concerns over the size of it, we've got that fallback position that you could end up with one large property there. And having two, it's only one addition, but at least it does give us an extra one for our 5-year supply as well. So I think it's good. It's all looks like good properties in keeping with what's there at the moment, and can see no problem with it.
Okay, go to the vote. Those in favour of the officer's recommendation, please show. Those against? 1, and I'll abstain as I forgot to vote. Okay, that's carried. The next item is item 2.3, 23/502/412/full 6 Wallbridge Lane, Upchurch, and can I ask the officer for a update?
Thank you, Chairman. No update on this one. I'll just very briefly present the case for members. So this is an application for a replacement dwelling on Wallbridge Lane, number 6, and the property is within the village confines of Upchurch. Just an aerial photograph that shows the site within the confines. Members will see on the other side of Wallbridge Lane, that's the Upchurch Golf Club. So on the left, this is a site plan of the existing dwelling, and the proposed dwelling is shown on the drawing on the right within the red line. Again, this shows the elevations, existing and proposed. I'll just see if I can possibly zoom in a little bit more on those for you. That's not part of the presentation, by the way. Okay. Yeah. So members can see existing front elevation, top left, proposed front elevation, top right. The area that can be seen in pink around the top parts of the building, that actually denotes the scale of the original proposal. This has been subject to amendments during the course of the application. Likewise, then the next images below the elevations, existing and proposed rear elevations. And then side elevations, again, that large area in pink on the right-hand side is an area of the scheme that's been removed from the proposals following discussions with officers. This is a street scene drawing, the properties on either side are chalet bungalow and bungalow. The bottom street scene drawing actually quite helpfully shows an outline of the existing property in blue and the proposed property behind it. Members can see that the proposed building is slightly lower in height and slightly wider, although it does maintain 2 metres at 2-storey level to each site boundary. And then these are photographs of the site. This is the current site, the current property in brick. Members can see on the right the chalet bungalow to one side. This is at the back of the site. Now, members will be aware from the report that really the key issue why this is a committee is because the parish council have raised concern in particular about the external appearance of the building and in particular the use of materials. The proposal is for the use of render on the elevations, and it also includes a black slate style roof. On these photos, members will see that there are a number of properties in the area that do have rendered finishes, and they're also, great variety in terms of the style, design and finish of most properties there. So on that basis, officers consider that the external treatment and use of render is appropriate and in keeping with the very mixed style and character of the locality, and the recommendation is that planning permission is granted. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask for Councillor Rosewell of Upchurch Parish Council? You got 3 minutes from when you're ready, and I'll let you know when you have 30 seconds left.
Thank you. Good evening. Upchurch Parish Council objects to this application on the grounds that the exterior finishing is not in keeping with the local palette. The council notes that the comparison to properties being built in 116 Oak Lane, which has not been received favourably by the parish. There's been many complaints about why it was allowed to look like it is. In the planning statement, it says this is being replaced with something much nicer. Again, the people in the area have said it's not much nicer. It's noted that there are comments of a 50% reduction on emissions waste is a key concern, and yet plans to demolish a house and rebuild it. How many years before the environmental impacts that has caused is balanced by the new build? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rosewell. I'll move the officer's recommendation if I can have a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Jays. I'll throw it open for discussion. Councillor Thompson.
I may be missing something because maybe I haven't seen it before, but why are they demolishing it? Exactly, I don't understand. It seems like a perfectly good house to me, and as it's 5 times the imprint and pollution created to demolish the house and build another one, just seems mad. Just retrofit. If you want something else, buy something else. But it seems insane to me. But
thank you. If there's nobody else, go to the vote. Those in favour of the officer's recommendation, please indicate. 1, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Those against? 2 abstentions. Councillor Henderson, you weren't in the building.
Sorry, I shouldn't vote.
Yep. So those in favour again, please. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yep. Those against? 2, and abstentions.
2.
So that's carried. I'm aware we've still got a number of applications left. Officers have been here for a long time. I'm going to follow the trade union rules and call for a 20-minute break after VDU use for 2 hours. Okay, the next item is item 2.4, 22/505/369/full, former RAF mast, Courtney Road, Dunkirk. And can I ask the officers for a update and presentation?
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. Evening, everybody. There's no update for this one. I will provide a presentation setting out the terms of the application. So it's an application for a data storage facility. As Chairman just said, Courtney Road in Dunkirk. In terms of the application site, so land edge red on that plan is the application site. So sort of a long, narrow, linear site extending back from Courtney Road. Directly to the north is the RAF mast, which most people will be aware of, situated in Dunkirk. So there's housing immediately to the south and to the east. The site itself is actually in the countryside. The built-up area boundary runs along the southern boundary and the eastern boundary of the site, but in the countryside for planning policy purposes. That is a satellite image of the same location plan I've just shown you. So the site is, you can see my cursor running along there, effectively moving linear along there from Courtney Road back into the site, and I won't need to point out the mast. So this is taken effectively standing at the fence from Courtney Road, and there's some existing essentially some porter cabins on the site which will be removed to make way for the proposal. And the so the access road goes in effectively where you can see the track there, which will meet a car park, and then the building will be beyond that, but I'll explain that a bit further when I show you the block plan. This is taken a bit further up the road, just back into the site, just to show basically what's on the site at the moment and what will be removed. And you can start to see there the extent of the landscaping around the perimeter of the site, which will be retained and enhanced as well. So existing access, which will be utilised coming off Courtney Road. So here's a picture of the closest residential unit to the site. For the context there, you can obviously see the mast, and the site sits the other side, sorry, of this this planting belt here that runs adjacent to the dwelling. And just in terms of context, the surrounding area, in terms of the general heights of buildings, mainly 2-storey. There are some bungalows in the area. Yeah, 2-storey dwellings mainly. So in terms of the precise detail of this application, is that okay, or does anyone need me to zoom in? I'll carry on. So as I just explained when looking at the photographs, you've got the access road going in from Courtney Road. That leads to the parking spaces, and then you get the building beyond that. So that sits quite deep into the site when viewed from Courtney Road. The elevations are shown here. As the report sets out, this effectively takes some cues from the site's military history in terms of the elevations, but with what I'd say is a contemporary twist, with some of the finishing materials which are proposed. And here's the side elevations there. So some stepped elements with variations in roof heights to break up the massing essentially. In terms of the internal floor plan, I won't dwell on this too long because it's a data storage facility, and it effectively has it has software in there which stores data. Yeah. And on the first floor. So in terms of the, this is a street scene image. I think is quite useful. I will zoom in on this one. And what this shows is that the building is no higher than the number of the dwellings that surround the site, and obviously all of those are dwarfed by the mast itself. Just in terms of some background on this application, there's been a number of proposals on this site for a data storage facility, some of which went to appeal, the most and were dismissed for various reasons. But the most recent one was granted planning permission by this council, and this proposal is an identical scheme to that. The only actual difference is that there's a biodiversity net gain that's been secured under this application because of updated policy, essentially. But yes, we've got the same scheme here as was approved in 2018, and it's just a case that application has lapsed. So that's why they've resubmitted it. And the application, as set out in the report, is recommended for approval. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can you just confirm whether or not it's a listed building, a listed monument, or whatever it's called?
The mast is grade 2 listed.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, can I ask Councillor Tutt from Dunkirk Parish Council to attend, please? I'll let you know when you have 30 seconds left.
Chair, good evening, members. This site, as the officer said, has been going backwards and forwards for the last 12 years. It is outside the built-up area. It's next to the grade 2 listed mast. It abuts the monument. It was felt to be disrespectful to the mast in its setting, but that's sort of going back a bit now. But going forward, we've really always had concerns about the amount of kit in there and the amount of air conditioning and the amount of noise that comes from all the fans and everything that's there. And the report does say that it's been concluded that it's technically feasible to stop the noise, and they hope it won't be exceeded. And they go on in terms of there's a post-installation sound assessment, which we feel is detrimental to the owners because they've got to build the site, put it all together, put in their air conditioning, and then say, it doesn't meet what we thought it would. And therefore, it's going to be too noisy and too much for the residents. It's going to be a constant hum in the background for everybody locally. If this is done after the event, then we can only hope that it's okay. But of course, we're only hoping. There's no evidence to say it actually will meet those levels. And if they don't, we're then saying, well, we'll have to look at further mitigation. And I don't think we should be doing that after the event. This is something that should be dealt with prior to this being passed by this committee. And it's just the wrong way round. I wanted to say also that I'm very grateful that the Parish Council can be here tonight to speak to you, because Head of Service didn't think that the Parish Council's objection was sufficient for it to come to Council. We're very grateful to our Ward Councillor, Councillor Gould, who effectively had to call this in because the normal way of working is under threat at the moment, as you've probably seen from the Planning and Transportation Working Group, where
30 seconds.
We're basically officers, I think I might say, are trying to get many of these things taken back under delegated powers so that it won't come to committee. To be honest, I don't think that's really democratic. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Councillor Gould. Thank Councillor Tutt. Councillor Gould.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I think my main reason for bringing this in was the noise issue, and really to make sure that the committee is satisfied that the conditions is robust enough to satisfy the concerns that have been expressed. Because once built, a noise nuisance is actually something that's very difficult for people to escape, and you can look away, you don't have to look at a building, but actually to have a constant hum can be very detrimental to people's mental health. And so I really would like the committee to pay great attention to the conditions around the noise mitigation, and to be satisfied that it is adequate, and that if it doesn't meet the requirements that are designed in there, that actually it will be possible, without relying on sort of extensive enforcement, to actually correct the problems if they do arise. I know that certain residents on previous occasions, when there's been large generators at this site, have been very significantly affected by the noise issues there. And so I think it is a very sensitive issue around the issue of noise pollution, and that's the issue that I really would like the committee to consider. There were some changes made following discussions between myself and officers, and I felt that I was actually almost being a one-person planning committee, and I wanted it to be brought to the committee so that what has been put in there can be considered, and that it doesn't just be saying this is okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Can I ask the officer to come in on conditions, please?
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. I think it's firstly useful. What I'm going to do is just show members what the condition was on the previously approved scheme, just so that we can make a comparison, because we've got the same development essentially. So, the right side in terms of paragraph 1.2 there. I will. Yeah, I'll move it in as close as I possibly can. There we go. You want me to read it? I'll read it out. Okay. So this was the condition, as I say, on the previously approved scheme, same development, but it's lapsed now. But for context, so it said prior to first use of the building, details of noise mitigation measures based on the silencing system recommended in Appendix 4, basically of the acoustic report, shall be submitted to and approved by the local planning authority. Upon approval, the approved details shall be installed in the building before its first use, and thereafter this system shall be maintained to meet the intended noise mitigation levels. So effectively they had to provide the details, they had to be agreed, and then they had to be put into the building. That's what needed to happen at that point. As we've recommended for this application, what we've done, if members turn to page 122 of the agenda, conditions 18, 19 and 20. So we've got what we've got now is a staged approach, which is, in my view, far more robust than what we had previously. So what we've got to do, well, sorry, just to go back, with the application, we've got a feasibility study that the council's environmental health team have said, yes, it's feasible that they can carry out this development and keep noise levels to an acceptable level. So that's sort of the first stage they've gone through. Then we go on to condition 18. So effectively, before they do anything, so they can't commence the development until they give us a detailed design of the facility, along with the acoustic performance of all the components associated with the facility and the mitigation measures to be employed. So effectively, that's going to be an acoustic design report. So before they do anything, they've got to submit that to us. Our environmental health team will assess that, and then if it's approved, they can effectively build the development. But they can't use the development after then until they submit a verification report under condition 19. And what that needs to do is demonstrate that all the relevant noise mitigation measures, which have been recommended in the approved acoustic design report, have been implemented into the development. So again, so they need to demonstrate that they've done that. And if they do that, then they can move on to the next stage, condition 20, which is they've started using the facility, but within 1 month of that, they need to submit to us post-installation sound level assessments, and then they need to submit those to us. Effectively, if they're in line with what they expected at that point and the noise is mitigated to an acceptable level, then that's the end of the process. But there's a further stage if they don't, and that's that the results of that if the results of the assessment show that the sound levels are exceeded, then they're going to need to put in further mitigation details, and they're going to need to do that within 2 months, the data storage facility starting, and then they're going to need to put those into the development. So I appreciate that was quite long-winded, but what I'm getting at there is we've got a extremely robust set of conditions, and the council's environmental health team consider them to be acceptable. And as officers, we don't really see what else would be possible to do in terms of noise. Thank you very much.
Okay. So can I just clarify, you could theoretically have the building built and because of the noise level, they wouldn't be able to operate it, but the building would remain in situ.
That is one of the possible scenarios, yeah.
Can't they put these things underground now?
I think on the basis that the facilities, I think some of it is underground, but I think on the basis that because they've got the software or the hardware, whatever it might be, at ground and first floor level, then they need to have systems in place to deal with those parts of the building, cooling fans, etc. So they need to be located at those levels.
Councillor Henderson.
Yeah. Approved, 5 years ago. And I listened carefully to the condition, and we were told only 2 or 3 hours ago about how we should look at conditions. That is about as tight a condition as I have ever heard, and I cannot think that we have the slightest justification in turning down this application with that kind of control over it. So I think we should approve, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay. Can we just see the picture of what they're at the moment? And the fact that permission was given in 2018, there are some decisions made in 2018 that we probably wish we'd never made.
Sorry, you wanted the existing site photos, did you say?
Yeah, please. And this is a listed building, listed structure.
The mast is, yeah.
A what?
The mast is, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, not that.
I wasn't.
This is going to be twice as high and about 3 or 4 times as long. That is going to have a huge impact on the setting of that listed monument, listed structure. That's what concerns me. What have Heritage England said about it? I can't remember.
Yeah, they support the application.
Oh, do they? Yes. Okay. Bear in mind, I need to move a recommendation. If I can have a second, Councillor Hunt, thank you. Okay, I mean, I really don't like it. I think it's dreadful. Councillor Hunt.
I'd like to disagree with you, but I actually think when you look at that site with these porter cabins on, having something pushed to the back of the site and as a properly designed building is going to look better than the mess that's there at the moment, and in better keeping with what's in there. I think the design that has come forward for it is a good one. I think when I saw it, I just considered that was out of Kings Hill, Westmoreland. You've got the old buildings there that were on the airfield, and it's that sort of thing that I think that they're obviously looking at the design with. And I don't think it's going to be out of place there at all. I think it's actually been considered quite well. And obviously, yeah, we have got it that it's been approved before. So with all those conditions that are really tight, I can't see any reason why we can refuse it.
Hey, Councillor Thompson.
I just wondered if we maybe had to add another condition. As you said, we've moved on from 2018, more priorities around sustainable build. What sort of solar have they got there? They do actually have access to the whole site. They've just chosen to use a small section of it, but the whole building could be. But one of the main things is it will use a lot of energy. One of the issues that happens when you're developing is that then gets allocated to that site. If people then want to do domestic or increase other areas in that area for rural activities, for instance, they then won't have any energy. So just sort of something to bear in mind. Can we put a condition around it self-generating, which it can? It's got the whole south elevation. And then another one which will come up because it'll have very robust systems within it if it loses power. So it'll have to have generators and things. They could then be, rather than internal combustion, can we put a condition that there's something like power stars, their static battery support rather than generators, which does upset the neighbours and won't have the same implications around our robust system because they'll be temporary. In other words, they'll be running for a short period of time, maybe a few days or a few hours, coming in and out, obviously creating pollution. So is that a condition we can put in about them having solid states or battery rather than, which is completely doable now, rather than generators?
Okay, and somebody who understood that, give me an answer.
I'll take the first one first. In terms of sustainability, condition 25 is the relevant one, which meets our policy DM19. So that's that's policy compliant as long as they're in accordance with that. So they're going to need to do that. In terms of the battery powered generator, question. Bear with me a second. Yes. Yeah, I think we can add in some word into condition 18 to say that what they provide in there will be a battery powered generator. I think that's fine, yeah.
Are we all agreed with that? Next. Okay, with nobody else to speak, I think. Councillor Clark.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just coming back on one of Councillor Thompson's points, I don't think we've had the answer yet as to what sort of solar PV could be conditioned, or has the applicant already submitted details of PV to link in with what Councillor Thompson said about the battery store? Thank you.
It's wrapped up in condition 25. We don't know what they're going to do yet to meet the BREEAM good standards. They'll have to provide detail. I mean, I think we could, to be honest, I think we could, if you're getting at amending the condition to require it, I think we'd probably do that in terms of condition 25.
Yeah, I think, Chairman, if I may, through you, the condition 25 is a bit wishy-washy. I think that does need beefing up quite substantially to require them to submit what PV, solar, etc. they're going to be putting on the site to mitigate power usage. Thank you.
Okay, can you take that on board?
Yeah, that's fine. Just to confirm in terms of 25, obviously the BREEAM standard is obviously a nationally recognised certificate, which there'll be various different ways via which they can achieve that. But if PV panels is something that members want to go onto the development, then we could include something in that condition. We'd need to be, I think the point is we'd need to be precise in terms of what we want them to do. If we want to add something extra into that condition. So if it's PV panels, then that's fine.
They're going to look even more out of place in the heritage site, aren't they?
I think if they were on the flat roof. Yeah.
Councillor Hunt, you put your hand up.
I think it's a good idea to make sure we get as much as we can with PV and things, but we need a policy on it. I think if we have policy at the moment just says it's BREEAM, we need to be putting a policy in that's got a lot more detail, which is done through the local plan process. So I can understand the concerns, but I'm not sure how we're going to be able to achieve it. But that said, on a building like this, I think it would be good to have something done because it is going to take a lot of power. But I just wonder if we ask for a few solar panels we put on the roof, how much power is that actually going to generate? If it's drawing a lot of power that's needed to run this, having some solar panels, unless it takes specifically how many panels and what power needs to go in it, it may last a few minutes, whatever it generates itself. So not sure how it's going to actually benefit, as it can't run the whole thing. I know.
Councillor Thompson, you're going to come back and tell us.
Yes, right. Yeah. The main thing there would be that the panels themselves, judging by the size of the building, probably in the region of about 18 kilowatts or somewhere around there. But what it would do was actually charge the battery, the static system, for backup for energy. So that would then mean they haven't got to draw from the mains. It gives them backup for their battery support when the generators are needed, and that will just tickle along and be charging them where and when necessary. So it would be useful, especially in an emergency situation if they've got no power. But you're right, it wouldn't run the building continuously, but it all helps. So
we generally agreed we want to beef up 25. Yep. Councillor Jays.
Thank you, Chair. I was wondering if we could beef it up even more by going from good to very good BREEAM standards.
Well, yeah, thanks. Yeah. The policy puts the threshold on when we can ask for good or very good. DM19 says over 1,000 square meters we ask for very good, and under 1,000 good, and we're under 1,000. So I think there'd be an argument to say, I mean, I don't disagree with the with the idea behind it, but I think in terms of planning terms, I think we could be accused of being unreasonable if we were to push them on that. And I think effectively, if we done that and they sought to vary the condition back to good, I don't see how we could say no to them, because that would be policy compliant.
Okay. Those in favour of the officer's recommendation as modified, please show. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yes.
6, 7, 8. Oh. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Those against? 2. Okay, so that's carried. We only had 14 people here. Okay, are leaving us. Okay. Remind me when I count up, we're now 14 again. All right. The next item is item 3.1, 22/505/646/out, land at Ufton Court Farm, Tunstall. This is recommended for refusal. And Simon, I think you're presenting.
Yes, Chair. Thank you very much. I'll bring the presentation slides onto the screen. But first of all, I'd like to draw attention to the tabled update, just to respond to one of the local residents who had originally objected that we hadn't referred to all of the listed buildings within the Tunstall Conservation Area. So that's referred to, but it doesn't materially affect the heritage assessment in the main report. Secondly, Councillor Clark also expressed concern. It was called in by Councillor Clark, and his concerns are summarised, on which we went to KCC Highways, and they have responded as stated in the update note. I will cover the concern about the Riddles Road closure when I do the presentation slides, just to clarify exactly where that is. So what we have here is the site. It's a significantly large site, as you can see, amounting to a lot of hectares. I'm just trying to refresh my memory here on exactly how much. 27.5 hectares. And the application is to seek outline permission for 290 dwellings. This is the site, which is an existing apple and pear orchard, which sits to the south of Minturn Avenue, specifically to Woodside Gardens, which is over in this area here. So Minturn Avenue running along the top end, and you've got houses on the eastern boundary in Stirling Road. So this is the remainder of the site, which is the south eastern end, and you can still see the houses on Stirling Road, and the site boundary terminating at the junction of the Tunstall Conservation Area over in this direction. And that's a closer view of Woodside Gardens, bungalows currently, and then towards the western boundary is Starvacre Lane, which is basically a farm track that leads down to the main entrance to the field. And you've got allotments along Riddles Road, as you can see. College Road is here, Minturn Avenue Junction. This is a view looking southeast towards Tunstall, and another view of Stirling Road to the left. So in terms of the proposal itself, the main access is created on a new roundabout off Minturn Avenue. There is a connector to the left, as you can see, towards Riddles Road, and I'll come to that in a moment. The site surrounded by existing public rights of way. The proposal essentially is two clusters of housing. One cluster right behind Woodside Gardens. These will be bungalows along the boundary in respect to the existing arrangement of the built environment in that locality. The main spinal road will come right through the site. A large proportion of the site is to be retained as green space. That's covered in the report. The southern section, which is the second cluster of dwellings, will back onto Stirling Road. And as you can see, the area is crisscrossed by a number of public rights of way. So the proposal does have connectivity with the existing public rights of way. But as I said earlier, a large part of the site is retained as green infrastructure. So if we can move on to the main access point where the roundabout is, coming off Minturn Avenue and into the site itself. In terms of the concerns that Councillor Clark expressed about closure of Riddles Road, the idea really is to, or the proposal is really to block off any traffic turning left out of the site down Riddles Road, which is essentially a narrow country lane. You'll see from the update note that the KCC Highways are satisfied that provided this blocking off and preventing traffic from turning left down Riddles Road, but leaving the remainder of Riddles Road down to Borden Lane open to allow access to the adjacent fields and the allotments, and secured by a Section 278 agreement, that will require a TRO, which is a public process, and it is incumbent on there being a planning permission in place. But clearly the recommendation is for refusal, for primarily because the scheme does not provide 40% affordable housing, which is required under policy DM8 for rural sites. And technically this is beyond the built-up edge of Sittingbourne, and it is for all intents and purposes rurality. And this is an overhead shot of the parameter plan and typology, which shows the two clusters of built housing propose up to a maximum 2.5 stories nearer the main road. So essentially the assessment has been carried out on the basis that they have not demonstrated that they can provide a 40% affordable housing. We have asked them for a viability assessment on more than one occasion, but that hasn't been complied with. There will be harmful impacts on the landscape itself, although that will be mitigated over a 15-year period when the landscape matures. But nevertheless, the current position is that there is harm to the local landscape and loss of farmland. As you saw from the earlier slides, it is an existing orchard. So due weight has been given to these factors, and in the planning balance, officers consider that it would not be sustainable development, and refusal is recommended for the reasons which are set out at the end of the report. As I said, primarily for the absence of a 40% affordable housing, and also the impact on the local landscape and the best and most versatile agricultural land. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Can I ask Kate Coventry to speak, please?
Yes, hello, I'm online.
Thank you.
Good evening. I am the planning consultant acting on behalf of the applicant Hallam Land Management. Thank you for the opportunity to address you today. The applicant has worked diligently with your officers and those at the County Council to arrive at a scheme which they could support. By September of this year, officers had intended to recommend that the application be approved. Only in the last month has the position changed and you've been presented with one substantive reason for refusal. The officers now believe that the scheme should deliver 40% affordable housing rather than 30%. I intend to draw your attention to material considerations that are either absent from or not fully explained in the accompanying report, and I hope that you'll positively consider this application and its ability to assist the borough in its shortfall of housing. The application site is located to the south of Sittingbourne, which is the main principal settlement in the borough and is at the apex of the local plan settlement hierarchy. The application site is immediately adjacent to the built-up area and is in a highly accessible location. It is not subject to the policy constraints experienced elsewhere in the borough, other than the gap policy, which is immutable. Swale Borough Council cannot demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply, and there is a shortfall of housing in the borough. The boundary of Sittingbourne will need to be amended to accommodate housing to address this shortfall. The presumption in favour of sustainable development is engaged, and planning applications like these should be granted unless any adverse impacts would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. It is the applicant's position that, as was the officers until recently, that permission should be granted. Pre-application engagement was undertaken with the council's planning and landscape officers who supported the application and advised that the planning policy requirement for affordable housing is 10%. As set out in the report, there are no outstanding objections from statutory consultees or the council's internal consultees, aside from comments raised by Board and Parish Council. In the context of the reasons for refusal, it is instructive to note that the council's housing officer supports the contribution for the proposed development that it will make for affordable housing. Moreover, the landscape expert that your officers appointed to advise them on this matter concluded that compliance with DM24 and DM25 could be achieved. Neither of these points are included in this evening's report. There is no beneficial weight given by our officers as to the 30% affordable housing. Weight is only given to the disputed shortfall. No weight is given to the other benefits of the scheme, including significant biodiversity net gain, provision of 63% of the site as green infrastructure, public access to the community orchard, improvements to the existing public rights of way, and the provision of sustainable
30
drainage
seconds.
systems. Thank you, which together attract substantial weight. The economic benefits from construction and future expenditure attract significant weight in the context of the local economy. These, alongside the significant benefit of delivering market and affordable housing, are not significantly and demonstrably outweighed by any adverse impacts. I would therefore politely request that members do not follow your officer's recommendation and instead approve this application. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Can I ask Councillor Cheeseman as the ward member? Actually, not as a ward member, but that sort of.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me to speak on this item. The report locates the application in West Downs ward, but this is not correct. The application is in Woodstock and Borden wards, and the roundabout is in Homewood ward. There is a massive local concern in my Homewood ward, and I believe many of the objections have come from the residents that are represented by myself and Councillor Clark. Many older residents have recalled the struggle of the early 1990s to turn land south of Riddles Road into a major development area. And as then, there is concern that if this is agreed, there will be further development to come. I am pleased the officers recommend refusal in spite of the pressure to meet the council's 5-year supply. The arguments against plainly outweigh the consideration, especially as the case for affordable housing is not properly made. This site is not in our local plan. It is outside the built-up area of Sittingbourne and is in an important countryside gap, which is terms of amenity is very important to my ward residents. It is on a Grade 1 agricultural land. As an application, it has nothing going for it. My ward is very concerned about the highways and traffic implications, and I'm amazed that Kent Highways raised no objections. This site will considerably increase traffic movements, and if Riddles Road is closed, it will disperse traffic into other parts of our ward, such as Homewood Avenue, Ufton Lane, Borden Lane, where there are already congestion problems every day. Kent Highways did mention the new development at Wises Lane and still said there's no objections. This will increase traffic around the area. There is to be 2 roundabouts in Borden Lane to help with the increased traffic. And then to say another housing development is all right is a total fantasy. And what about the construction vehicles? It may be said that there are schools in the area to meet needs, but do we really want more traffic around these schools? Meanwhile, we really do not have enough GPs in the area for serious increase in the population. Where does this all end? With little or no Grade 1 land, children at home as there's not enough schools, and Sittingbourne and the surrounding area gridlocked. I hope the committee will unanimously reject this application. It seems to be a very speculative attempt to make use of the pressure on this council to allow more housing in the borough. Thank you.
30 seconds. Okay, thank you, Shelley. Can we just get some clarity on, You mentioned a significant amount of this would be open space. Who would be, under the proposals, who would be expected to take on that open space? That's for you, Simon.
Thank you, Chairman. My understanding is that if it was approved, the Section 106 would secure long-term maintenance via a management company appointed to look after the site, all the green spaces within the site, including the play space and open space. I'm not 100% sure whether the council would take the responsibility of long-term maintenance. So that is what will be expected in terms of management and maintenance. Thank you.
Thank you. That does concern me, that there's a large amount of green space that wouldn't, it would be left to a management company, potentially sold on at some point later. I would feel a lot more comfortable if this land was turned over to the council and the council were responsible for maintaining it. I know that's an extra burden, but that's, you know, you've got extra 260 houses worth of council tax. That does concern me, that this land is going to be left to a management company and they can potentially sell it on for more housing if that's what happens. So that bit of a future ownership of that land is at worry. So Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. I have considered this report extremely carefully. And I do thank the planning officers for coming forward with their recommendation for a refusal on this site. The recommendations for refusal, I believe, are robust, but I believe that there are more mitigating circumstances that could also be put to these refusal recommendations. Firstly, I draw the attention to page 126 to the planning history. We have got a planning history here where it was called in by the Secretary of State and refused, although this was back in 1994, as mentioned by Councillor Cheeseman. I haven't been able to find the wording anywhere online or anything else like that. I don't know whether the officer might have access to this. A simple yes or no would suffice. But I think this also could be used to add weight to the recommendations for refusal. Now, where do I start with the rest of it? I will try to keep it as brief as possible, Chairman, but just on highways issues alone, I refer back to the table paper for tonight saying that these concerns were raised by myself. Yes, these were just some of the concerns that I was raised, and they haven't actually been answered by KCC Highways, not in full. I refer to halfway down the page where it says as Wisey's Lane, which starts as Wisey's Lane with a application, a report number, planning number. It says in there, if they wanted to go forward with this application prior to implementation, these works, policy MU2 land northeast Sittingbourne features in Swale Local Plan 2017, sensitively designed traffic management, etc., etc. Well, this isn't in northeast Sittingbourne; it's in southwest Sittingbourne. So that statement doesn't even begin to wash. More on the highways. Yes, we've got 2 roundabouts that are planning or about to be installed at any time now in the bottom of Adelaide Drive and one at the top of Homewood Avenue in Baldwin Lane, because both of those junctions are at capacity. And those roundabouts are being put in there to raise the capacity for when the Wisey's Lane development becomes fully built out and the roundabout comes out from the Spine Road, from the Wisey's Lane development into Baldwin Lane with another roundabout. And coming on to the actual access to this site via the roundabout at the junction of College Road, Minturn Avenue, Riddles Road, etc. You've got 3 schools within a short distance of this proposed site access, which are already congested both morning and afternoon at ingress and egress time for the children. It's significantly dangerous through there with parking. So all the access from this site coming onto College Road, Minturn Avenue will have to disperse out onto Homewood Avenue, where you've got a major primary school, Westlands Primary, which will then disperse either east or west along Homewood Avenue into Ufton Lane, Park Road, Gore Road, etc., etc. And for most people who may know this area, who live there, who drive it regularly, will know that this is an absolute no-go area. Not just at when the children are going in and out of school. As for local infrastructure, the bus services, there isn't one. The bus service, I think it was the number 5, was stopped by the bus company 18 months ago, I believe it was. So there's no sustainable transport along there. So all journeys in and out of this site will have to be made by car. And I also draw the attention to the motion that was passed by this council at the last full council meeting for the lack of healthcare provision in Sittingbourne, certainly, and the letter that has been written to the Secretary of State regarding that. I think this can also be used as another reason for refusal, because there is no healthcare facility. And when you look at the table, it says, oh yes, there's going to, they've got to provide £250,000 for health service. 32 London Road is already over capacity, which is one of the closest doctor's surgeries to this development. And I believe I stand to be corrected by Councillor Hunt, but I would assume that the Meads is already at capacity, if not over capacity, especially with the development north of Quinton Road coming online at the moment. All the traffic for schools would have to come through Homewood Avenue, etc. So that just about deals with the highways issues. We then come on to, well, it is partly a highways issue, but it's an issue of flooding, surface water drainage. Now, it says in the report that there's mitigation that could be put in place for surface water drainage, etc. But anyone knows the area that as soon as there's more than about 2 millimetres of rain, there is a massive, great big lake right across College Road, Riddles Road and Minturn Avenue Junction, which is one of the reasons is KCC don't keep the gullies cleaned. And adding all these houses on there with the surface water drainage coming down the main road into the site is only going to exacerbate this flooding. So we look at then the MPPF decision to ensure that the development is sympathetic to the landscape setting. Well, we can see that what we've got there at the moment is beautiful orchards. And as it said, it's not in the built up area of Sittingbourne, it is in a countryside gap area. So our policies do robustly support that. I could go on for a long time, Chairman, but I don't want to keep members here any longer than necessary. Suffice to say that I wholeheartedly support the recommendations of the officers on this, and I hope the committee will support this and the officer's recommendation. And I believe that, in my opinion, we could add the the Secretary of State's 1994 decision to the weight for this, and also highways, because KCC highways, they haven't considered the cumulative effect on the road infrastructure in South Sittingbourne, and even in North Sittingbourne, as a fact. I mean, it took me, what, 35 minutes to get from Asda's to Park Road this afternoon. And with all these other houses coming on, I'll leave it at that, Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, so I think the proposal is that we include the Secretary of State's comments from 1994, and but there's also a refusal grounds on highways. Can I just ask the officer to?
Sorry, Chair, and if I may just come back on that one as well. Also, the motion that was passed by the council at the last full council meeting with regards to healthcare provision.
The lack of GP provision. Okay, who do you want to answer that one? You're going to do it? Kerry.
Thank you, Chair. So firstly, in terms of the previous decision that was made on the site, the right place for that probably isn't within the reason for refusal, but depending on what it says, it could be built on as part of evidence that's put forward as part of the appeal, and we'd do that in consultation with whoever our counsel may be. In terms of the highways impacts, I mean, as we all know, we don't have an objection from KCC Highways, and I understand the concerns that have been raised. However, as we all know, any decisions that we need to make need to be based on evidence. And at this point, the evidence before us is that any highway impact will be satisfactory, and thus in the view of KCC, the statutory consultee, and those views do need to be given quite considerable weight. In terms of community infrastructure, again, we've gone out to consultation and we don't have any objections subject to completing a Section 106 agreement. There is a reason for refusal in relation to that not being completed at this stage, but more specifically in relation to healthcare, as you pointed out, Councillor Clark, there is a financial contribution towards healthcare, and for the purposes of considering this application and planning policy, what the applicant needs to do is mitigate it, and that's achievable through a contribution. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, my concerns with this are, it's not really highways, but to mitigate this and make it acceptable, KCC have basically closed off, or proposing that Riddles Road is closed off. Now, that is the access to the allotments. To access the allotments, instead of going that way, is going to push a lot more traffic along Homewood Avenue and Borden Lane. But yeah, that might be perfectly fine from a highways perspective. But I think the impact is on the social impact on the allotment holders, that they are going to be going a lot further out their way to access their allotments. You have to drive to an allotment. Don't have to drive to an allotment, but if you're going to do heavy digging, you're going to need, you often take equipment. I used to have an allotment along there. I don't now, so I don't have to declare an interest. And I come in the other way anyway. But yeah, there's a lot of people who come from the Minturn estate to use those allotments. You are going to be asking them to drive further, which is a further impact on the environment. As Councillor Clark said, the extra journey will be taking them through several junctions, which are already have got to be alleviated with roundabouts. So you're increasing the environmental impact of what should be a positive journey to the allotments. A lot of people use that road as a cut through to get to Borden. I tend to use it if I'm coming back from the office. I would normally go through Riddles Road and into Borden to stop at the Maypole. But if you haven't gone there, you've got to go down Homewood Avenue and turn. It's probable that is a less appealing journey for a lot of people to make. So I think there will be an impact on a number of people who will use the local pub. But I just think the social implications of closing Riddles Road are really negative. And if that's the only way you can mitigate the damage of this development, I think that mitigation is too negative to justify the development. That's a long way of saying I don't agree with the road closure, but I would like to see that as a reason for objection, or considered as a reason for objection, the social and community implications of closing Riddles Road. Kerry? I move the officer's recommendation.
Yeah, Mike. So I've just been looking at the local plan, funnily enough, whilst you've been talking, and done a search on Riddles Road just on the basis of what was in the tabled update. And I noticed that there's some text in there about potentially closing it relating to the South West Sittingbourne development. I just think for something for members to consider is that I think an inspector will give some weight to the fact that in the local plan there's already talk about closing Riddles Road being a possibility. I'll leave it with you.
Yeah, well, as mentioned as a possibility in the local plan, what was actually in the Secretary of State's decision, because there was a lot of arguments against closing Riddles Road in that as well. Was it held up in the Secretary of State?
Yeah, I didn't want to give too much because I just wanted to inform everyone that it was in there without knowing the detail. I just wanted to sort of make sure members were sort of aware of the local plan position in terms of Riddles Road.
Perhaps to close it at the other end. You'd be closing it at both ends.
Okay.
Councillor Hunt.
Thanks. I can see the concern with that one with the road, because yeah, if somebody does live that side and they want to get to their allotment, driving all the way around does seem a bit stupid. But I've also got the thing that I know that people walking down that road say it's dangerous because of the amount of cars that come through and you can't walk anywhere. And if we're trying to get people to walk and cycle, surely having it closed off is better. But I think if it was anything, maybe it's a case that allotment holders have access from that side, so it's not completely closed off, and it is a bollard or something that allotment holders can get through to access it from the other side, would be my suggestion. But it's up for refusal. We're talking like it's going to be approved, and I know it's a case of make sure we've got enough things in there for when it goes to appeal. But I just can't see why we even got it here. It's just officers have put forward recommendations for refusal. They've got good reasons, and let's all just vote on it and get it to appeal, because that's where it's going.
Councillor Winkles.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to be very brief on this. I mean, Councillor Clark covered it far better than I probably would. But I will raise a couple of points here. 290 properties, if this was to be passed, most households have at least 2 vehicles a day. That would, going out in the morning, evening, would probably be 500 to 600, 700 traffic movements a day, which is quite excessive for that road network. There have been 43 objections to this, very good objections been put forward. And I'd also like to add, I think the officers got this right this time, to refuse a development. As already been said, I know this is not a planning consideration, particularly for this one, but if we pass this one, then it spreads, and it spreads, as we've seen in North Sittingbourne. So I'm totally behind the officer on this one. Thank you.
I'm going to move that we suspend standing orders. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Winkles, those in favour? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Those against? 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, we nearly came back again soon in the week. So we carry on. Councillor Henderson.
Sorry, Chairman. I really do not know why we are talking about this. This was put forward by officers to refuse. It is clear that we want to refuse it. It is clear there are good reasons for refusal. So can we please move to the decision that we know perfectly well we're going to make?
Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. I will be brief. 7.9.7 on page 139. It was alluded to earlier on that the applicant actively engaged with KCC Highways, etc. They didn't engage with any of the ward councillors or either the parish councils. So that's that. Going through on to the page 144 on the table for contributions, it does mention their mitigation on air quality damage. This council has declared a climate and ecology emergency, and I don't want this particular area being included in an AQMA anytime in the future. And
Councillor Clark, are you going to propose any further potential conditions that we can vote on?
Not conditions as such, but just one last thing, Chairman.
Well, that's what we
in
need.
the table, which says it, whilst KCC haven't raised any objections, they want 174,000 towards Key Street Junction, the A2 Swanstree Avenue Junction, and signalised reconfiguration at Dover Street and Milton Road. So to say that this isn't going to impact on the highways, they can't have it both ways. They either don't object or they do object and they want mitigating monies. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, I'm going to move that, I've got to test this out. I'm going to move that we add as a reason to refuse the social and community impacts of closing Riddles Road. Do I have a seconder? So Councillor Clark. Those in favour of that being added as a reason, oh, do you want to comment on that? Go on, Kerry.
To come back to the point again that I was making earlier, in terms of highways and the consideration of this application, we don't have any objection from KCC Highways, and they are our statutory consultee in this instance. Any of the works associated with highways would be subject to a Section 278 agreement under the Highways Act, which would be the KCC to consider rather than this committee this evening. So I really would recommend against including that as a reason for refusal, as I think it would be challenging to defend at appeal, and it could leave us susceptible to costs.
But
Thank
it's
you,
not
Chair.
a highways matter. It's the social and community. It's not saying highways, you're challenging what highways impact. It's saying the impact of their mitigation would have on the social and community aspect. So we're not actually asking highways to defend their position, because from a highways perspective, they're happy. It's the social and community impact of their decision. So they wouldn't go along and argue it because they'd say that's nothing to do with us. It's down for the officers to say what the social and community impact is and whether or not that's good.
Yes, I think it's sort of the evidence around that and how we'd evidence it. I don't think at this stage we have any evidence to support that reason for refusal, and that would leave us, like I said, susceptible to costs.
Okay, so you heard the officer, you've got a proposal. Councillor Jays.
Could we not delegate to the officers to find the right paragraph in the MPPF that would suit this?
Well, no, it wasn't considered. Okay, I'm happy to modify that, but it's delegated to officers in consultation with all umpteen ward members to see if an appropriate condition can be put in regarding that.
Chair, I think it might be paragraph 94.
Of the MPPF?
Yes.
Can you read that out, please, Councillor Jays?
Yes. Planning policy and decisions should consider the social, economic and environmental benefits of estate regeneration. Local planning authorities should their planning powers to help deliver estate regeneration to a high standard. There might be a better one, but maybe give it to officers. It's 10 o'clock.
Right. So if a suitable condition can be found, reason for refusal, in conjunction with the ward members, otherwise we'll leave it as it is. Councillor Henderson.
Same, yeah. Three rights at this item, and 3 times Kerry has come back and said she advises you don't put it in our argument. There is no way you would allow any member of the committee to have 3 bites at it. So I really don't think you should.
I would indeed, and I have done. It's just the fact I haven't actually been able to get around to having the vote. I keep getting alternative suggestions and additions, and if we are now at that stage, whatever it was I proposed and Councillor Clark seconded as a potential reason for refusal, subject to it being agreed that we can find an agreeable way forward. If we can't, we don't come back and it's not included. That's preventing it being delayed. Are you happy with that, Councillor Clark? Okay. So those in favour of adding that as an extra condition on those extra reason for refusal on those conditions, please indicate. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, 6, 7. Those against? Councillor Henderson, you voted twice. Well, I hadn't called. Okay, I think that condition's lost. Okay, so we'll go to the substantive motion. Those in favour of the reasons for those in favour of the officer's recommendation to reject. That's unanimous, thank you. The last one we've got tonight is item 2.2. It's ours, so please don't vote against it, but I can't remember what it is. Right, it's page 93. It is reference number 23-503-705/ADV. You got an officer's report on this? You can keep it quick.
Thanks, Chairman. Yeah, as Chairman just said, the only reason this is at committee is because it's a council application, and we dealt with an application at the committee in June for 3 of these signs, and this is related to one of those, but the location needs to be slightly amended, and there's no amendment process under the advert reg, so it's a fresh application for one of the adverts. I've got 12 slides, but I'm not gonna go through all of them. Yeah. So it's on the corner of Preston Street and Station Road in Faversham, just outside the station. For those of you that know it, there's a pedestrian crossing right outside the station that goes over towards the Railway Hotel. The sign, I'll just show you on this photograph, was going to be on this corner. It's now not going to be on the corner. It's now going to be just to the side of this crossing here. The sign is as shown here. Same sign. The sign's identical as previously approved. I'll call that a day in terms of my presentation.
Thank you. I'll move the officers with recommendation, seconded by Councillor Jays. Anyone like to speak on this? Councillor Henderson. Those in favour, please indicate. Thank you. That's been passed unanimously. Thank you. No, it wasn't. Oh, sorry, I didn't. Those in favour of the officer's recommendation, please vote. Oh, sorry. And those against? 1. Quite right. I was tempted to vote against it myself. I don't like him in Sittingbourne, but I don't want to be killed by Monique. Okay, thank you all very much. That has passed, and see you at the next one. I now we move on to part fives. Excellent appeal decisions, some really bad ones. Anybody want to speak about any of them? Councillor Hunt.
I'll leave the Tenham one for Councillor Speed. I'm sure he'll comment on that one. Linstead, that's the one. It's all the same area, isn't it? I do think that we shouldn't, as a committee, just brush over these ones, because I think they are ones that we should look at and probably learn from. All I'll say is, and if 5 were dismissed with the delegated decisions of officers and 2 were lost to the committee, which we went against officers recommend. Well, say we, I didn't. Going against it, I just think that as a committee, we do need to learn from these and really look at the detail in it and learn for the future, hopefully.
Councillor Speed, I suspect you might not be agreeing with that, but let's hear what you have to say.
Funnily enough, not. Yes, it's item 5.4 I'd like to comment on. This is an absolutely shocking decision by the planning inspector. This committee voted overwhelmingly to reject this application. The inspector totally ignored the deficiencies in the highway report that didn't even examine the impact on the nearby A2 junction. She seems to think that Tenham has an array of facilities and good public transport, which is absolute nonsense. Residents in Linstead Lane will no longer be able to park outside their own houses. The lane can't cope with all this extra traffic. It's open grassland outside the settlement boundary of Tenham, and it conflicts with policies in the local plan. I could go on, but fundamentally, to me, I think the system needs to change. I think it's totally unacceptable that someone can breeze in